Hello everyone, welcome to another video of this revision series. In this video, we will talk about cardiac output. Actually, there is no such specific definition for cardiac output. Rather, cardiac output is expressed in terms of minute output and stroke output or stroke volume. Minute output is defined as amount of blood ejected by each ventricle per minute, whereas stroke output is defined as amount of blood ejected by each ventricle per beat. And the relationship of minute output in terms of stroke output is minute output equal to stroke volume or stroke output into heart rate. It is as simple as that. And sometimes minute output is called as cardiac output. Therefore, the value of cardiac output is the value of stroke volume into value of heart rate, and the normal stroke volume is 70 ml in a healthy individual, and the average heart rate is taken here 72. Therefore, the value of stroke volume is 5 liter approximately in a healthy individual. Now, the factors that control cardiac output. As cardiac output is the product of heart rate and stroke volume, thereby the factors that regulate heart rate and stroke volume individually will also regulate cardiac output. And we know heart rate is mainly dependent upon sympathetic or parasympathetic tone. And in this discussion, at least, this need no further discussion. Therefore, I have skipped this. I have mainly focused on the factors regulating stroke volume because this is important more. And the factors regulating stroke volume are actually the mechanical properties of heart. And these are preload, afterload, and contractility. Preload is also defined as end diastolic volume, and end diastolic volume is solely dependent upon venous return, which is further dependent upon some factors like cardiac suction, the difference between mean systemic filling pressure and central venous pressure, thoracic pump, skeletal pump, gravity, vasomotor tone, and blood volume. These terms are almost self-explanatory. Just mean systemic filling pressure and central venous pressure needs some discussion. Mean systemic filling pressure is the pressure in the systemic vessels after reaching equilibrium when the circulation comes to a standstill, and it is sometimes measured by clipping the ascending aorta and the roots of the great veins. Then the pressure inside the circulatory circuit will cause the diffusion of blood into various viscera, and the pressure obtained is like 7 mmHg, which is called as mean systemic filling pressure, and it is mainly dependent upon sympathetic vasoconstrictor tone and the blood volume mainly. Whereas central venous pressure is the pressure inside the central veins, and it is actually measured as the pressure inside right atrium. Therefore, in this two side, the pressure gradient will regulate venous return, will cause venous return, and thus the difference between MSFP and CVP is the chief regulating factor of venous return. And cardiac suction will obviously, as the name suggests, will cause more amount of venous return. Thoracic pump, during inspiration intrathoracic pressure becomes negative and it will cause more sucking of blood, thereby it will enhance venous return. In case of skeletal pump, the lower limb muscles during contraction squeezes the vein, thus more amount of venous return. In relation of gravity, gravity helps venous return from above the level of heart. On the other hand, it decreases venous return from below the heart level. And vasomotor tone, like the sympathetic vasomotor tone, will increase the MSFP by reducing the vascular capacity, and thereby it will increase venous return. And blood volume will obviously increase the venous return as it will increase the MSFP. Some other factors like myocardial compliance or intrapericardial pressure will also affect end diastolic volume, and some conditions like restrictive pericarditis, post-infarction fibrosis or pericardial effusion, they reduce end diastolic volume mainly. In case of afterload, it is regarded in terms of peripheral resistance, and we know resistance is inversely proportional to the arteriolar radius to the power of 4. And so the vasodilators and vasoconstrictors will regulate afterload mainly. In case of contractility, it is defined as the intrinsic property of heart without the value of preload and afterload. And contractility can be determined by positive inotropic and negative inotropic agents. And the positive inotropic agents like digitalis, theophylline, or negative inotropic agents like calcium channel blockers. And obviously sympathetic tone will cause more contractility, parasympathetic tone will reduce contractility. Now these three properties can easily be understood by a very simple diagram like this one. I have obtained this from internet, and this shows a horse or donkey, anything. It's carrying a loaded cart on a slope of hill, and the slope can be called as the afterload here in relation to the heart. And the load of the cart is preload, and the muscle power or muscle tone of the horse is like the contractility of the heart. Therefore, the cart must be the heart. So this is the diagram showing the relationship between these three properties of heart. Now we will discuss this one by one with the relationship with cardiac output. And in case of preload, the relationship between preload and cardiac output is defined by Frank-Starling law, which suggests within physiological limit, cardiac output is proportional to preload. And the curve obtained by plotting cardiac output on the y-axis and end diastolic volume or preload on the x-axis is like this one. And the curve distinctly has three parts. The A part suggests cardiac output is directly proportional to the end diastolic volume. The B part suggests cardiac output remains unchanged with change of end diastolic volume, and part C indicates cardiac output is now inversely proportional to the end diastolic. And now we will discuss the reason behind this curve. In part A, as we have said, cardiac output is proportional to end diastolic volume. This is because the stretching of heart opens up stretch sensitive calcium channel, causing entry of calcium, and this causes increased excitation contraction coupling, resulting in increased or more contractility. And another reason suggested like initial stretching of heart causes more amount of cross bridge formation and thereby more force of contraction. So in part A, cardiac output will increase with increase in end diastolic volume, and the reverse is also true. In part B, cardiac output remains unchanged. This is because all the calcium binding sites have already been saturated and maximum number of cross bridge already have taken place. Thereby there is no such change of cardiac output with preload or end diastolic volume. And in part C, where cardiac output is inversely proportional to end diastolic volume, because there is already excessive stretching that caused distortion of actin-myosin architecture, causing reduction in the cardiac output. So this is all about the relationship with cardiac output in terms of Frank-Starling law. Now afterload, as already stated, afterload can be obtained with respect to peripheral resistance, and peripheral resistance is the factor of arteriolar radius mainly, and we know that resistance is inversely proportional to the radius to the power of 4, and it is also found that cardiac output is inversely proportional to the afterload. Therefore, cardiac output is actually proportional to the arteriolar radius. And a curve obtained by plotting cardiac output on the y-axis and afterload on the x-axis is like a rectangular hyperbola. Now, contractility. It is an important property of heart which is also called as intrinsic property that determines cardiac output irrespective of preload and afterload. And it depends upon calcium concentration inside the heart cell or myocyte and the presence of number of beta receptors. And from the previous discussion, we already know cardiac output is proportional to preload when afterload is constant, and cardiac output is inversely proportional to afterload when preload is constant. So from applying the theorem of joint variation, we can write cardiac output is proportional to P by A when both are variable. And from this, putting a constant, cardiac output is equal to a constant into P by A, and this constant is nothing but some intrinsic property of heart, and this is called as contractility of heart. Therefore, cardiac output is proportional to the contractility when preload or afterload are constant, or the ratio of these preload and afterload is constant. And it is found that from the Frank-Starling law, the slope of the curve is actually the contractility of the heart, or the constant in case of that joint variation. So if we plot cardiac output with respect to preload, and there are more than one curve for a particular preload, the slope of the curve is decreasing in the order of B more than A than C, and thereby the reduction in the cardiac output. It is a very important concept in aspect of heart failure, because in heart failure also there is progressively reduction in cardiac output at the same preload, and in that condition there is a compensatory neuroendocrine change that causes shifting of this lowered cardiac output to some more amount of cardiac output, but the main or primary cardiac output is never achieved. Therefore, it needs treatment, and the aim of treatment is always to achieve the initial cardiac output by applying some drugs, and the drugs will act either by reducing the preload or by increasing the contractility of the heart, and thereby the drugs are prescribed.